Hold on,
Appreciate
please.
it.
And you are live.
Thank you. Would like to call the meeting to order, the Finance and Infrastructure Committee. The first order of business is a quorum call.
Thank you. I would like to call Chair Balducci,
Here.
Regent Gray Kemp, and Santiago. Absence is noted. Regent Stewart,
Here.
and welcome our ex officio, Professor Blitz,
Thank you.
and our student regent, Alex Grant.
Here.
Alex.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have 2 action items and 3 information items that we're going to discuss today. Beginning with the action items, construction and slope easement to the DOT for Norwalk Community College. Ben, are you going to, or is Keith going to do that? Keith, good morning, Keith.
Good morning. This is a small request from Department of Transportation at Norwalk. They intend to reconstruct a bridge on a small bridge on West Cedar Street, which is in the southwest corner of Norwalk Community College. It abuts a wooded area of the college. They'll close, DOT will close West Cedar Street. They need a small construction easement, 371 square feet to basically park dirt in their vehicles during part of construction. And also they're looking for or requesting 122 square foot slope easement. So after the construction of the bridge, we agreed to not change the slope over 122 square feet that they leave adjacent to the bridge. They pay public and private sector entities for a fair market rate, appraised rate for the use of the site, for the easements. Their cost to us will not exceed $2,000. That goes to our general fund. So I'm asking for the board's approval to allow DOT to have a construction and slope easement adjacent to Norwalk Community College.
Thank you, Keith. Just a quick question. Why do they need a permanent easement?
So they want to make sure that the bridge erosion doesn't occur at too great of an interval around the bridge, and also their foundations are protected from frost. So they want to make sure that the soil maintains a certain condition adjacent to the bridge. That soil's on our property, and again, preventing future erosion.
Because it's such a small amount, it's like a 10 by 10 piece or something to that effect, so.
It is, yeah, and they'll put it on the land records. So whether it's a foot or more, it still is an easement that goes on the land record.
Thank you. Any other comments by members of the committee on this issue? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
Okay.
Got a second? Motion made, seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. The second item deals with the CSCU 2020 fund reallocation. Keith, I think you're going to do that also. Am I correct?
That's correct. And for Mayor Stewart's purpose, since most of you are aware of the 2020 program, I'll just be brief. But in FY09, legislation approved the CSCU 2020 program, which was $950 million for 10 years worth of capital improvements for the universities. In FY15 and 16, legislation increased the program a little over $1 million for improvements at the colleges. And in FY20, there was another increase of $16 million. We had been asked to delay our final 4 projects up to 2 years, and we asked for compensation due to escalation, projected escalation against those 2 projects at Central, 2 projects at Southern. From the $16 million, the board allocated $9.1 million to Central's engineering building that had a budget issue, and the remaining funds were left basically for Southern. Of the $9 million, $9.1 million for Central, the engineering building is complete. There's $4.9 million remaining, unallocated, unspent, uncommitted. A couple of months ago, the final project at Central under the program, Burritt Library additions and small renovations, bid for construction. We're over budget by $2,356,607. And we are asking the board to allow of the $4.9 million remaining and unallocated from the engineering building to reallocate those funds, $2.3 million to Burritt Library and the remaining funds of $2.6 million to Central's Code Compliance Infrastructure Improvement Program. The remaining funds for Southern will come back to the board at a future date and ask to have those funds reallocated as needed. So we're asking the board, and also with this approval, projects and programs that require more than a 5% increase over the budgeted expense, the budgeted cost, require in the past legislative approval. Back in October, we saw Burritt Library was going to exceed its $16.5 million budget by at least $2 million. So we started to set the groundwork for a legislative change to increase that amount. OPM had advised us these are special funds, and I have it in writing, for program use for the final 4 projects. And as long as actions of the board were consistent with the way the funds were provided to the board, legislative approval was not necessary. So we're not seeking legislation to increase the Burritt Library cost by more than 5%. We could do that on board approval. So I'm requesting the board approve of the $4,967,252 remaining dollars of this 16 original $1 million, that 2.3 million be reallocated to Central's Burritt Library and the remaining fund be reallocated to their Code Compliance Infrastructure Improvement Program. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Keith. Aaron, yes, Aaron.
I've got a question. Central's Code Compliance and Infrastructure Improvement Program. Do we know who's in charge of that? Is it Sal Centurino?
It's Sal, that's correct.
Okay. And then the overall, thank you for the background on the program itself. Just a question, how much money is left in the whole program?
I'll get to that in the next report.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just, that's good that you said the 5%. Is that, if I heard you right, because of the 4 separate projects, they were able to combine them, and you got the blessing of OPM on this in writing that we can do this and not have to go before the legislature because it's in excess of 5%, correct?
I have an email dated October 4th from 3 OPM members stating that, yes.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'd make a motion to adopt a resolution. Is there a second?
So moved.
Motion made second. No further discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Resolution is adopted. We'll move on to the information items that we have before us. The first one deals with the semi-annual report for 2020 of CSCU, and Ben is going to.
Well, that's also Keith. Keith is giving that one too.
Oh my God! Oh, I see. This is today's day with Keith.
I guess so.
Well,
Yeah.
I got the next one.
Oh, okay. Keith, okay, now I know why you said you had a response for Aaron momentarily in your next report. So why don't you go on and do that semi-annual report for us? Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Keith.
Sure. So every 6 months, the board sees this a similar report updated. It lists every 2020 project and program, and we legislatively report on the status of where we are for each. It wasn't funding year. Every funding year, it was either 3 or 4 funding years originally. The program was combined as, but we give a report on where we are. Really, without going into too much detail on the individual list, most of our dollars were spent over this past semi-annual event on our major projects, being closeout of Southern's Health and Human Service Building, construction of their new business school, and the engineering building. On page 19 of the report, gives really a summary total, I think, of what you'd like to see, how much we committed, how much we've expended, and what we project to spend this year. So over on the right side of the sheet, we've committed $1,005,999,000 to date. We've expended $974 million to date, and we project spending $38 million over the next fiscal year, 2000 through 2023, actually.
Thank you.
So is hopefully over the next year.
Answer, Mayor Stewart, is that we are scraping the bottom of the barrel with this program. We are almost fully expended.
Gathered that, hence why I asked.
Most of the remaining funds will be spent at completing the business school at Southern and Central Sport Library. And I can answer any questions if you have.
Questions by members for Keith, Felice, or Aaron? I think your question was answered.
I do kind of have an additional question. Again, I'm sorry for like the overarching, like macro questions here. Once you expend this totally down, which clearly is going to happen very soon, there's nothing to replace it in terms of an overall funding mechanism for infrastructure improvements?
So we submit our biennium budget and ask for new authorizations, which we continue to do. And of course, there's a pending biennium budget.
So that's
And
this year.
It's for this coming year, and also prior authorizations that we've received. And also, Ben may speak more about it, but Terrence Chang is asking for a CS, the 2030 program, which is an extension of this, including the colleges.
Got it. Thank you.
During the course of this program, Mayor Stewart, the state provided funding both through the CSCU 2020 program and also through one-off bond authorizations allocated to the bond commission. So we've had sort of a dual funding approach for the last number of years. But again, we've asked for a major expansion and extension of this program.
So I do have just kind of one overarching question, which is, as I read this, I'm inclined to understand, given most of the detail speaks to repairs or refurbishments, but I'm wondering to what degree was a pencil put to determine what things are relative nice to haves when we see things like upgrade without further explanation that could perhaps be deferred. And I'm thinking in this instance, specifically to the telecommunications infrastructure upgrade. Since these things are multi-phased, are there things that could either be phased into different year or prioritized in a way to focus on repair versus a broader definition of upgrade? It's not obvious to me. And that popped to my attention, given, it's an $18.4 million figure.
I'd be glad to share with you, getting in the weeds, really. Not your question, but how we establish our dollars. So we do reach out annually and coordinate with all the colleges and universities on what their requests are. We try to project out for the next decade on what they need. Not just the major requests, also the minor requests, the IT requests, auxiliary service requests. So we do try to separate these programs out to the type of bond fund that we would be asking for. And we do prioritize from that. And we do look heavily at operationally critical items, health and safety items, and those good to want items that you had commented on. They are important because they have a need, but they're prioritized with everything else. And usually they end up taking the lower priority, of course, because operations and health and safety become the primary issue. And so there's a critical balance, and we try to slide everything in and make sure everything functions well. And again, I'd be glad to share it with you, how we phase everything and look at it.
No, my larger question was understanding that that they were phased, and before presenting that perhaps there might have been, additional review, which you're confirming has been done. So
Absolutely,
thank you.
yes.
Any further comments or questions? If not, thank you for that, Keith. The next information item we have is a report on Gateway and Long Wharf. Ben's going to be doing that, commenting on that.
Sure. I provided this report because there is a fair amount of activity in our efforts to provide a new automotive repair facility. Not that we need our automobiles repaired, but we need to teach people how to repair automobiles. And we have such a facility in the North Haven campus of Gateway Community College, which is very old and in need of significant upgrades, especially with the advent of electric vehicles and new transportation technology. So we have been working to try to fund and execute a replacement facility for that at the former Gateway Long Wharf site, which is where the old Gateway Community College used to be, next to the furniture store off of I-95, if you drive by it, down on the Long Wharf area in New Haven. So we have been unsuccessful in obtaining sufficient funds to undertake that project, but we still control the real estate there, which is, I think, 7 or 8 acres of commercially zoned land in Long Wharf. We have been working with the city off and on over several years. The city has done a major redevelopment plan for the Long Wharf neighborhood that includes the property that we own. The city is very interested in having the redevelopment of that property, further their overall redevelopment aims for that neighborhood of the city. Recently, the city has approached us anew and indicated that they have made new progress in their discussions with our neighbor, who is the Regional Water Authority, who has a property about 4 times the size of ours, if I remember correctly, immediately to the north, or I guess to the east. They are interested in redeveloping their property. The city is interested in supporting a major redevelopment of that area that includes our property, the property that is where the Regional Water Authority operates its headquarters and operations facilities, as well as there is immediately behind our site a building called One Long Wharf, which is a big multi-tenanted, mostly medical office building owned by a real estate investment trust. And the combination of those properties, I think they are looking at a multi-tenanted new development with structured parking there that would include those medical uses, maybe some new medical uses, the Regional Water Authority, and our automotive facility. We have been quite clear with the city that we support their redevelopment goals and want to be a good partner with the city, but that we are only interested in participating insofar as the development will result in us having the new facility we need. We have this real estate asset, which we see as a path to replacing this critical piece of instructional property that Gateway needs. So we are, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware, because we may later this year bring to this group action of some kind to further our involvement in this development project, which appears to be potentially gaining steam and may come together this year with an agreement. In addition to that, the city of New Haven has sponsored legislation in the General Assembly that would allow us to transfer that property to the city. It's just a statement of purpose bill at this point. We have been very clear, and the city has agreed with us that legislation will only go forward if it includes the appropriate provisions to protect the Board of Regents' interest in the property. Basically, that we will be authorized to transfer the property to the city as part of a redevelopment that accomplishes the goals of the board. So we're in negotiations there, and I believe that they are likely to become more realistic, more real and engaged over the next number of months. And there's a possibility that there will be a conveyance, a law allowing us to convey that property to the city, considered by the legislature. So I didn't want anybody on this committee to be caught unaware that this was going on, and to see a transfer of property or see any public discussion of that real estate development without having heard about it from us. The city is having a public meeting today, which I think the fact that they are now kicking off the public planning process around this redevelopment, I take to be very encouraging. And we will, we will certainly remain engaged with them. It's only a staff report because we're not asking for any particular action, although actions may be required probably in the fall or later this spring if necessary. And I didn't want the issue to be completely new to you, so I provided the report today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So in essence, though, the project for increasing mechanical awareness and school, that's pretty much now going by the boards, because we're talking about transferring this property over to the.
Well, no, we would only transfer it because they would have quite a bit of land assembled, and we would be right in the middle of it. Because there's a big parking field for One Long Wharf, and there's the large facility for the Regional Water Authority, and a public right-of-way. There's a fair amount of land, and they believe that by combining that land and building a single development, they can accommodate the Regional Water Authority's needs, our needs for vehicle facility on site, as well as some of the medical uses that they're envisioning. So we would get what we want, but it would be part of a larger multi-tenanted development rather than just a standalone building of our own. We obviously may end up with a standalone building. The development's an uncertain business, but they appear to be making headway.
Okay, because I had thought it was going to be gone, that mechanical facility for teaching, but good.
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
It would be there or potentially an off-site location, but we would need to have that accommodated for us to sign off on the transfer.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is that part of the CSCU 2030 plan?
The funding for the construction of a new automotive facility has already been authorized by the legislature. And the legislation that we have asked for related to our capital program does allow for us to finance the existing authorizations, including that one. So yes, it is, although in a slightly unusual, there's a group of projects that have already been funded that we want to move forward with. And we've included those in our plan in order to jumpstart progress on funding those projects.
Thank you. Any other questions, David? Any other questions by members of the committee? Hearing none, then we'll thank you very much for that, Ben. Let's move on to the last information item, which deals with the mid-year budget update.
Okay. I'm going to put a couple of slides up just so that I can speak to them. All of the slides, I think, show tables that are included in the staff report. I don't know if the font may be a little small to read, but you can go ahead to the next one. Oh yeah, we don't need the agenda. We can move on. So yeah, it's hard to read unless you're right up against your screen, and some of you are. But these tables are all in the staff report. I just wanted to give a summary of where we are. As you know, the mid-year process, early in the calendar year, we produce a mid-year projection to look at where we think we're going to end the year budgetarily at all of our institutions. This is the first time that we report actual expenditures on a budget basis for the prior year based on the audit that was completed, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Actually a little bit more than a month ago, but accepted by the board recently. So you can see we originally, first of all, for fiscal 22 last year, we showed positive operating results of $53 million in fiscal 22. That included $13 million at the universities and $39 million at the CT State and $400,000 at Charter Oak. Those are very positive outcomes for the system in a difficult year. They are a reflection of the significant amount of one-time federal and state funding that we received, as well as concerted effort to reduce expenditures and to control spending. I believe that all of the financial managers across the institutions in CSCU were mindful that any progress we can make to build our reserves will put us in a better and stronger position for potentially difficult years that we're coming up on in the future, both by setting aside money and by beginning to make permanent adjustments to our cost structure. In 23, our original budget called for a system-wide operating surplus of $9.8 million, a little 6.5 at the universities, and the remainder at the colleges. Actually, Charter Oak was concerned about having a small deficit, although not a material one in my view. We are, and that the mid-year projections, so when we look at that, we are showing at a system-wide level that we are projecting we will be $30 million below our revenue projection for the current year. So we are slightly underperforming on revenue as a result of enrollment and how our enrollment has materialized. But that is offset by a reduction in our expected expenditures of $3.6 million. Combined with a few other adjustments in transfers, we believe that our operating results at the end of this year will be positive of $20.1 million, and that improved over the just under $10 million that we had budgeted. So our operating condition is improving this year. We have been able to respond to lower than anticipated revenues with attrition and other management actions to control spending to more than offset the reduced tuition and fee revenue. I also would point out that we continue to rely heavily on one-time funding in this budget. There is more than $100 million of one-time funding. Well, we requested for it to be recurring, but was described and authorized to us out of the state allocation of American Rescue Plan dollars or one-time funds related to lump sum payments or retroactive payments out of the CBAC agreement, out of the state's general fund. So we are relying heavily on those one-time funds, but are able to project today an improved bottom line for this year. Still a modest surplus, but a modest surplus growing our reserves is the right thing for us to be doing in almost any circumstance, but particularly as we face a uncertainty about our funding levels in the coming biennium. So there's also, do you want to go to the quick the table, this slide here? The individual tables are there for each component unit if anyone has any questions. But I will provide this enrollment table just so that you can get a sense of how enrollment is in the parts of our system. At the state universities, which is the group over at the left, they have slowed their decline, and I'm told that their decline, there are reasons for optimism within the universities that some of that decline in the current year is related to the it takes 4 years for a cohort, or maybe 5, for a cohort to move through the enrollment structure at the university. So the freshman class was somewhat stronger than expected, although there was offsetting attrition in the older grades, in the more senior levels in the university, resulting in the continued decline down to 20,616 full-time equivalent enrollment. At the universities, at the colleges, it has leveled off. And I would point out that it has actually increased if you look at it on a headcount basis rather than an FTE basis. enrollment looks even better. But one of the things that I think is enduring, or at least enduring so far, legacy of the pandemic is a increased preference for part-time attendance in the community colleges and lower average credit attempts by our students. So while we have as many students, or maybe a few more, the continued decline in credit attempts is what it shows that small, 400 student or 350 student full-time equivalent student drop between last year and this year. But I remain optimistic, especially the community colleges appear to be, turning the corner on enrollment. I'm hopeful that the universities will be able to demonstrate that the early signs of a positive freshman class will continue into the fall of 23 and begin to turn that around too. I acknowledge that the university enrollment trends are slower to turn than the colleges, simply because of the time it takes and the frequency with which we get all the students in the colleges is really quite short. So I think that's in the context of these enrollment numbers, I'm extremely encouraged by our mid-year budget forecast and think that we are well positioned to survive the next year across a range of outcomes for state assistance. So that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any comments? I would just make one, and just to reiterate your point, Ben, that we have one-shot dollars here, and after this year, it's approximately $130 million roughly in federal ARPA money and HERF money that'll be gone next year. So we are going to have to find ways to make up that 130 million or thereabouts so that we can provide for the top-notch education that our students receive at both the colleges and universities. And by that, we're going to have to maintain professors and staff, at the level necessary to produce those kinds of students. So I just reiterate Ben's point. He mentioned it twice, mentioning it again. Next fiscal year, we are not going to have this kind of help.
And we'll have, we'll know, you'll be receiving a lot of information from us over the next 24 to 48 hours as we assess the governor's budget proposals and how those relate to our requested funds under the CSU 2030 program. And some of the state of play will be much clarified, and we will be sure to communicate that to all the members of the board as soon as we have a cogent analysis to provide you.
Thank you. Yes.
It's just a follow-up to the question I've asked before. It's on page 29 of the agenda packet. When you talk about, Leslie, is the 11.9 million in HERF institutional funding for guided pathways advisors. That was a significant hire, over 150 people for whom funding is really not available after 2023, at least not from the sort that they can take from now. So what are the plans for funding those lines?
I don't believe that the approach that the management at Connecticut State Community College is taking to address their budget issues is focused on a specific, there's not a special funding source for this. I believe that they are attempting to adjust their expenditures to a point where they can accommodate all their priority expenditures, including guided pathways. Although the guided pathways program is a little smaller because of changes in enrollment. I'd be happy to turn that question over to CFO Kelly from CT State, if you would have a response on that, Carrie.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks. I think Ben was alluding to our strategy. We initiated the Guided Pathways Advisor Program by using a combination of HERF dollars, HERF institutional, plus institutional resilience funds from the Department of Ed, as well as ARPA funds. And so these are a combination of layered federal funds that expire late next fiscal year. And we are working through deficit mitigation strategies to free up additional dollars and expect increased tuition to result from continued retention to partially offset the cost into the future. But we'll of course need some more operating support. This is something we also put forward as a budget request to OPM in the fall, asking for transitional cost support for the guided pathways advisors as well.
I would also observe that if on page 30 of the report, the following page, and I don't take any credit for this, Carrie Kelly deserves the credit for providing all this information. CT State has eliminated positions or otherwise, in some cases, eliminated positions that were occupied. In other cases, positions that were not occupied. And the savings from those position reductions, which were all in the management ranks for the most part, relatively senior administrators, that they have eliminated 27 positions for savings of $3.5 million a year. So they are, I have confidence that the the deficit mitigation strategies that Carrie is speaking of are real. Whether we've seen them all yet I don't think we have, but we certainly have begun to see meaningful progress to reduce the size of the administration at CT State. I think some of this is natural adjustment. We were building an institution from scratch, and as that institution has stood up, they became aware that there were ways that they could reduce the cost of the administration, and they've begun to take those steps to do that. So I anticipate you will see further deficit mitigation steps, probably mostly built around attrition, because attrition is a very effective way to save funds in an organization like ours. And also because there's been a fair amount of retirement activity and turnover in the last few years because, frankly, because just generationally, we're all getting older, and that seems to be affecting our workforce, myself included. So we think that this is, I am encouraged to see that CT State, while I agree that finding replacement funding for the one-time state and federal funding for guided pathways or any other part is a major challenge, that CT State is certainly taking the steps that they need to take to size themselves appropriately to be a sustainable college and to meet the needs of students.
Helpful to have here, although it's not part of the fiscal report, percentages of retention. But here we have on page 29, it's the enrollment numbers, but the advisors were also supposed, as you said, to increase retention to the point that this would offset to a considerable extent the additional costs. It would be helpful to have those numbers, obviously not today, but.
Yeah, it's a little tricky because the program is pretty new. And so I think we really have maybe one cycle of, retention takes a few years to measure because, you can't retain somebody until time passes. So we are, I know I've seen some preliminary looks at that, and I will try to gather that. I know we've also looked at retention in the PACT program. The PACT program appears to have favorable retention as well. It's a little hard to separate that out because all those new PACT students also had a guided pathways advisor. But we're hopeful that the combination of student services and supports, as well as affordability, is the formula for improving retention and improving enrollment.
Any other comments on the information item that Ben has just given to us? Hearing none, any other comments, concerns by members of the committee?
Excuse me, I have a quick question. This is Alex. Would it be possible to receive that chart? Hi. Would it be possible to receive that chart that had like the budget breakdown for the system?
Yes, that was included in the staff report, which was
okay, perfect.
part of the agenda. I'm
Great,
happy to
thank you.
send you the electronic files for that if that's helpful, if you need it in a different format. but it is available in PDF form as part of the agenda packet.
Yeah, no, honestly, I should have assumed that, so I could probably find it myself. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll make sure we send it on.
Thank you, Alex. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to do actually two things. One is to accept the Finance Committee minutes of September 14th. If any additions or corrections, I'd like to make a motion to accept those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments then? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. The other is to adopt the minutes, or to accept the minutes of the October 12th Finance Committee meeting on page 6. Any comments, corrections, et cetera? Hearing none, that I move that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes have been accepted in both the September 14th and October 12th meeting. No further comments or questions by members of the committee, or hearing none, then I would make a motion that we adjourn today's meeting. There a second? Felicia, you're smiling. I got that.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you all for participating and being here. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Felice. Thank you, David. And of course, to our staff here at the facility. Oh,
My
yes.
pleasure. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too, Mayor. Take care, everyone.
Excuse me. Luis?
Your live stream is stopped.